I thank everyone for not going out in the miserable weather and staying home with us. So that's pretty cool. I want to thank Pro Photo Daily, American Photography, Photo Shelter, and Epson for supporting us. And just a shout out to Jay as we start really the new year again. For always being there and always being the one to bail us out when someone doesn't know what we're all doing. So, from a technology standpoint, Jay, thank you very, very much. So, tonight we have Beth Ayura and Steve Giovinci. I'm sure I'm crucifying both names. So, we're going to start with Steve right now. Off you go, Steve.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
So, you share your screen.
Yes, does that work?
Yes, we see you fine at full screen.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much, Frank. I really appreciate it. My name is Steve Giovinco, and
Giovinco.
pronunciation variations are completely accepted. I'm a fine art photographer um, in New York, and I'm going to talk about night landscape photographs of Greenland. Um, and just going to briefly go over some early work, my process. I'm not going to read everything or anything. Go over like a body of work, and go over some questions if there's time or whenever that's appropriate. But I just want to start off saying that it's I really appreciate like giving these talks because what I've done is I kind of rethought or reframed my work. So at any opportunity, it's always good, to um, to accept, to give a talk because it's always helpful to talk about the work. So thanks again.
Mm.
So I'm gonna, like I said, talk about Greenland, and I'll get into the details in a sec. This, by the way, is a 6 foot tall block of ice. Um, it's a little bit hard to see what it is, but it's just like this block of ice was just kind of sitting there. Um, but I don't want this to be political, but obviously, like Greenland, it should be its own country. I mean, that goes without saying. And, no one should take it over. I mean, it's completely insane.
Yeah,
So just wanted,
Steve,
yeah.
one question. How did you get to this space? The nighttime landscapes. What was the moment? This is what I want to do.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll talk about that in a sec, but
Okay, great. Okay.
no, that's fantastic. That leads into early work. What I did was I began this night landscape series. Uh, Actually, probably the first time was at Yada, which is an artist residency. I don't know if you know it, but it's in upstate New York. And also, big props if you can ever go to a residency, um, apply or always apply to residencies, because you go with other people, or sometimes it's alone. And it's, sitting down to dinners, like a round table of, talking to people. It's really great. So, what I did was, I don't know what I'm going to do exactly there, but I began to make these night landscape photographs during the nighttime. This is actually in Beijing from a while back. But during the day, I would make a completely different body of work. And this is actually myself and my partner at the time. So this is couples work. And I'm just going to go through a handful of these. But they're very different, but actually there's some similarities, and I'll talk about in a sec. I'm very interested in light and shadow. And that's something that sort of goes throughout my work. And kind of going through moments of daily life, or kind of just not completely framed, but just as people living their lives. So this is me, and this is my shadow, reflection of me. But I'll just pause on this one for a sec. I just want to mention, so the way that I work, the way that I made these and other work is I set up the camera on a tripod. I put it in the room. And when I feel like there's a moment to photograph, I have it ready. And then I sort of quickly frame it very quickly. And then I step into the frame. So what I'm doing is really kind of, it's a cross between sort of, recreations as well as sort of documentary of people living their lives. But the point is that it's really, it's work on the tripod and I don't look through the camera. So it's kind of a different, it's sort of a non-photographic way of working. And by the way, I have my mouth open. So I'm kind of creating these other narratives. I'm pretending like I'm talking, but I'm just mouthing opening my mouth. And this, a lot of people, this is actually a towel because of the slow shutter speed, but it, kind of looks like it's unearthly or kind of an odd sort of animalistic thing.
Yeah, Robert had the question that was right on the top of my head that your mate during this time, what is she thinking? Was this far afield, or this is, who my boyfriend is at the time?
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, she was a willing participant. She liked it. And it was kind of very unobtrusive because, well, I guess as unobtrusive as having a camera there. But I mean, it would be again basically like, oh, let's have breakfast or something. And then the camera would be there. And then I might move it a little bit. And then I might say, oh, I'm reaching for the bagel. I don't know. And then, oh, let me try that again with the camera.
Hmm.
So they were kind of trying to be very naturalistic and unobtrusive. And it's never like stop and move. Let me just go back. It's never like, I had no idea that this would happen. I never tell her to stop or to move or anything like that. And this is a whole series on itself, but um, it really dovetails into the night landscape work and be glad to answer any questions too. But during the time, like I said, I would make daytime photographs with the couple, and then at nighttime, I would make some of these.
And this is all shot on film at that time.
No, this is all digital.
Okay.
Yes.
All digital. Okay.
Yeah, everything is digital. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is also at Yaddo, so I'm very interested in these kind of eerie lights
Mm.
intersecting with kind of artificial light. This is actually the sky, this kind of strange red sky.
Wow.
And actually behind here is a lamp, but you can't really see it. Um, but this is, kind of major elements of
Yeah.
my work. This is in France, and this is a palm tree, but it looks like a column or like some other kind of abandoned structure. Maybe it was cut to be a certain way, but it's just, you know, looks like it's sort of human made in some way. Oop.
And
This is
so,
the
so
moon
Steve,
rising.
so this transition from shooting yourself in images, that sort of goes away now, and now we're just in landscape. Was that easy for you to make that transition?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it became sort of a natural thing to do.
Mm.
And then I don't know, for some reason, actually, let me just go back here to here. This was in France maybe 10 years ago or something like that, at a residency or a grant. And actually at that point, I really did begin somehow to switch to like a nighttime schedule. So I really would be working until like 3 or 4 in the morning. And somehow that also fit into like working at nighttime. So it kind of became a natural shift and it became much more meditative and So yeah.
Okay.
And here I'll just pause on this one for a second. This is actually in Wyoming, but again, what I'm doing is I have the camera set there on a tripod and wanting to get sort of a natural view of what's there. And this is near a road, and a car was turning around. And so the headlights shined through the trees.
Wow.
So it's like, oh, damn, I really didn't want that. Or I thought, oh, that's like an hour ruined. These shots are maybe like an hour or 2 hours long.
Wow. And what
But
format?
so this is probably like a 20 megapixel camera. I usually use Sony. So now I have like a 40 megapixel Sony um, uh, Alpha Mark IV. Um, but yeah, so just on this, I really thought, oh, this was ruined, but I love it. It really reminds me of like an X-ray that's through the world. And then I began to do also sort of more integrating into architectural elements, um, into uh, into the work. So again, there's sort of an element of and artificial light or artificial structures. This is in Eastport, Maine, so this is the furthest east point in the U.S. And I'll just pause on this one, and then we'll get to Greenland. But this is at the Bay of Fundy, where they have, if you remember in grade school or something, there would be tides that would go like 25 feet tall, sink, rise and sink like 25 feet over a cycle. So this is actually like an 8 hour photograph. And so this area that looks like fog is actually water. And these other elements are kind of this whole state in between. It's capturing low tide and high tide and everything in between in one photo. So again, these are kind of elements of like things that you normally can't see with the naked eye. So that's something I'm very interested in, or even with the camera, except after you take the photo.
And how did you find those locations, Steve?
Well, I was usually what I do is I mentioned this a little bit before, but usually what I do is I try to apply for grants and residencies. And usually they're in places where I want, like Maine sounded interesting, and especially this spot. So places where there's sort of like climate related activity that's shifting.
Okay.
So that's usually what that I'm drawn to, those kind of places. So Greenland was like walking into, another world. I went there twice on two grants, one in 2016 and one in 2021. But it's, really expensive to go there, and maybe it's better now, but it's really expensive.
And how long did you stay on the first visit?
Both visits were about a month long. So usually it takes some time to sort of, figure out where
Right.
to go and where, the photographic elements are, I guess. Usually what I do is the way that I work is that I usually go to a place several times or multiple times. Like, for example, this one, I think I remember going back here time after time or maybe night after night, because, oh, is the light a little bit different, or is there going to be a moon out? Or so I would go back repeating night, sometimes multiple days and nights. throughout the time.
Yeah, and when you come to a place like this, is there like a physical emotion like, oh my God, this is the place? You know, I've been here and I've been there, I've been all these other, like, does Greenland do that to you, or does any particular place do that to you, like where it just like takes your breath away? And what does that feel like?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think all the places do, where you're just sort of in the zone. Usually what I do is I go to a place for about a month, like a residency or grant or in Greenland. But this was especially, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
mind-blowing because, you're working alone. I hiked up this mountain, so it's like completely, I'll show you a little bit more. Um, but this was particularly, it's sort of like walking. Oh, I just want to mention this. It might be a little bit hard to see. This is a waterfall up here, and then over this is the ice sheet. So it's really like walking into a dream in many cases.
Wow.
Um, and this is a glacial kind of river that every once or twice a year the water melts and it gets above a certain threshold, like 20 miles away or longer. And then it comes down and makes this massive flood because normally this would be like a stream.
Mm.
By the way, this is a very similar location to this.
Okay.
Um, there's just a little bit different, and this might be at um, uh, the end of Twilight, but um, in some of the images, I really like this one because this is something I don't think I would normally ever take. There's just something kind of odd or I don't know, satisfying about this. There's this strange rock structure and echoing here. This beach kind of thing, just kind of interesting. And then I'll just pause on this for a second too. This is actually part of a dead glacier, and it's hard to see, but this is maybe like 6 feet between here and here, if you can see my mouse. And maybe this is like half a mile across or something. And the ice is all broken and filled with rocks.
And that substantiates a dead glacier?
Yeah, usually at the end where a glacier is kind of meeting the land, if it's not like right at a sort of a cliff where you've seen things break off in a dramatic way, this is sort of um, at the end of a life of a glacier. And so this is, there's like dirt and rocks. And so it looks very different than what you might imagine as a glacier. And there was like a very strange sound coming from here, almost like, like an engine room or like a elevator shaft mechanics room.
Mm.
But later I found out that was actually water, a river that was going on underneath the ice.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you. The dead versus alive, does that have anything to do with being fed by a water source?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of like where it's the glacier is actually retreating. I mean, this is sort of more into ecology and the environment, but actually the ice is retreating in Greenland and probably every other place. And as a result, it's not kind of calving or breaking off in maybe typical ways. I mean, there's always dead glaciers, but this is, I think, a particularly prominent aspect of that.
Okay.
So just briefly, this is a look out my window.
Yeah, in your travels, do you run into any wildlife, any dangerous situations, and do they make it into any imagery?
Um, in Greenland, there's not much. There are polar bears on another side, but there's really not that much to eat in, at least in this part. So there's really, I think I saw like Arctic fox once, but otherwise, In France, I did see wild boars, which I think are kind of dangerous. Um, but this is just a reminder like ice is moving, and these are giant, kind of parts of the ice sheet.
Wow.
But I just want to briefly show you. So this is Greenland, if you can see my mouse. Again, this down here, or this is Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada, Iceland, Norway, UK. So here's Denmark down here. So actually, I was down here probably below Iceland. And you could see wherever there's white or that's ice and snow, there's nothing there. There's literally nothing. And then only on the edge do you see like some land. And maybe it goes in like 20 miles, or maybe here it's maybe more, but it's usually only a few miles.
Yeah, Steve, you ever think of using a drone, for part of your research, or do you use a drone, or do you get into a helicopter? Um,
Yeah,
a-
yeah, I thought about that for a while, but I don't think so. And I did take a helicopter, I think for these photographs, or
or
maybe
you-
this was the plane. Um, but maybe, but I kind of like being immersed in the land and kind of repetitively going back and going to the place and seeing what's there.
yeah. And being that you go back a number of times, I mean, do you see the effects, straight away, of global warming, and how does that affect, this is a question from Glenn, how does that affect your work?
Absolutely. I definitely see that because I actually happened to go back. This is the kind of little area with a satellite view. This is that dead glacier area up here. So
Mm.
it definitely has retreated in the 5 years uh, between trips. It definitely retreated. And I don't know if it kind of impacts my work, but it really does have a different view. It's much more dirty, much more retreated. Uh, so I could definitely see it just with my own eyes. It's very, very abundant. I just want to show this. This is the same population as this. So this is like Peter Cooper Village or Stuytown or the edge of Stuytown in Manhattan. So maybe like 5 blocks or 7 blocks. So maybe 55,000 people live here, and that's the same population as here. So there's like, it's incredibly, remote.
That is a great thing to do, Steve. Thank you for doing that. I think that gives us all context.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to even imagine. This is a sheep farm. This is kind of almost like an ironic, cruel joke. This is landing at the airport, and there are like abandoned planes. Like, oh, that's
That's got to be comforting coming in, huh, Steve?
right, exactly. Yeah. But these lights, well, let me, oh, and just really briefly, I have an app on my phone so I can track where I'm walking, where like the base camp is, and other places to track. So I just want to talk about the process. So it's kind of similar to previous work. So this is what I would see roughly. It would be almost pitch black. And so what I would do again, that's why I showed the earlier work, is I have the camera set up. I don't really look through the viewfinder, and I kind of stand kind of by the camera and intuitively take the photo. So that's kind of the process from the early people photographs and kind of continues on here. So this is ASA, by the way, this is ASA like 80,000. So it's just like a quick test. And then this is what I see after 2 hours.
So, would that be the only common thread from the early work to where we are now, is that you don't look into the viewfinder?
Well, I think they share like an elements of kind of a psychological element, kind of like an emotional element to the work, and interested in color and light and shadow. So, for example, This, I think, is due to the moon that's up over here. So you can see this light and shadow. And of course, I could never imagine that. Um, so yeah, it's kind of in a way this sort of non-visualizing or non-seeing photographic process, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And do you miss the feeling of having people, albeit yourself as well, in the images, or you've that piece of your creative arc has moved on?
Yeah, I kind of get that question sometimes. I think like, why don't you take pictures of people? And I mean, that's a completely good and valid question. I think I think that might be over. I think I like the idea of like really embedding into the landscape
Mm.
and really sort of abandoning the world in a way that it feels like to be not reminded of anything else. Um, so I think I'm kind of drawn to those places.
Right. Yeah, and I didn't say it as a criticism. I said I
No,
was asking more from an evolution standpoint.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, yeah, and ask any questions at all, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And just briefly, I want to mention this is actually at an abandoned U.S. Army base. This area around where I was, you can actually see here. This was part of a kind of a museum, but this is July 1954, if you can read that.
Yeah.
Um, I think it closed down in 55. So this is some
Wow.
remnants, and everything in this town, Narsarsuaq, was related to this to the base.
Right.
So, for example, there's one hotel that used to be the old army base barracks. There's apartments there. They used to be the army barracks for the soldiers. So that I guess will probably be a place where maybe the U.S. will take over like a base, or because the airport closed down and other details. But so the last part, I just want to go a little bit deeper into the Greenland work, and this, like I sort of mentioned before, it's really, I think what I'm drawn to, and you were sort of asking about it, Frank, is it's sort of like walking into a dream oftentimes because um, it's so kind of disconnected from the other elements of Sunnyside, Queens, or the East Village where I live. So it's really like it's almost like a meditation. It's almost like a walking meditation. And I don't really meditate, but it's going into another place.
Mm.
And I
I
think you
mean,
can,
yeah,
yeah,
there are no sounds where you are, right? I mean, you don't see a plane. I mean, you don't hear a plane or a motor or anything, right? I mean, you're alone. That's great.
yeah. So this is really yeah, this particular place is especially alone because I went to, like, this boat dropped me off and they were supposed to pick me up in like 4 or 5 days, and they did. But like, what if they didn't? I don't know. I guess um so this is a particularly remote place, but almost every place is like that. But what I wanted to mention about this body of work, maybe there's another 10 or 15 images, is that they all have sort of a trace of a human kind of encroachment, or like an attempt to have sort of a human um, element. So it's usually by light. So these are actually um, lights from the airport that are like a mile away and they're flashing. But because this is like an hour exposure, it has this very eerie kind of glow.
Mm.
And this is, I like to call these pods, but these are like 6 foot high bales of hay that are wrapped in plastic. But it kind of looks like an ancient, sort of structure. And it's actually not too far off. You can't really see, but this over on the right is actually part of Norse or Viking ruins from the 10th century. So it's really, there's like foundations of houses and there's sheep walking around. There's no one here. So it's like really being transported into another land or another world, kind of
Yes,
metaphorically and literally.
yeah. I mean, you said you're alone. Um, is I mean, like, where do you get the information? I should go here. I should go there. Is it your research? Do you get a fixer? Like, do you get any direction?
No, so this, I forgot to mention, but that's a good question. So usually what I do is I do a lot of research beforehand. So that research could be sort of like cultural, as well as like deep research. Actually, a lot of this was on Google Maps and thinking there's some website that has like trails around the world and they're pretty obscure trails. So I'd look at that, but I would also look at Google Maps and see like, oh, well, there's a road here. Okay, that's is like a dirt road that connects the farm to the town that's like 10 miles away or something. But so I would usually do all the information myself. And then sometimes when I get there, I would hear from people. I wouldn't hire guides, but I would, see like, oh, someone might tell me about a place or something else. But or I would try to talk to farmers too, because I mean, just in terms of not really interviewing them, but part of my interest in understanding how climate has affected them um, is also of importance for me to know and sort of engage with them, at least to understand. And by the way, they would have drones
Okay.
to help look for sheep and the sheep farms, um, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But I think I'm really drawn to these places where it's really kind of this lost world. And so this is the aurora borealis, which is just, the green light. But this is the red light from that um, from the airport. So I'm really drawn to these
Still, wow.
places where it's just kind of, again, it looks completely black. I mean, you can't see anything. So only afterwards do you see or discover what the photograph reveals. So I think that's an important aspect of the work. And this, it's hard, I just noticed this the other day preparing for this. You can't see this, but this is actually a bike, a children's bike. Or so I just kind of love
Go
how
ahead.
there's sort of like an attempt to sort of conquer the wildness. And this is like a settlement of 50 people. And actually over here are more Norse ruins, but it's sort of like, this kind of intersection or engagement of trying to connect to like a civilized world, and it almost seems impossible, or it's overwhelmed by everything else. This is looking down. I mentioned that falls earlier, and this is kind of looking down through the clouds. And these are a few more of the kind of hay bale pods that are down below. And again, over this is kind of like the ice sheet that goes for like 2,000 miles.
Wow.
Um, is this? Oh, yeah, I have a few more. So these lights here.
Wait a second.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody wants you to go back one image. And Mashava, tell us what you're looking for.
Well,
if she
I
doesn't tell
can't,
us.
yeah, I camped right near here and I became fascinated by this rock. Um, maybe it was somehow put there, but I doubt it. There's a road right here, like a really rough road that goes down to this farmland. And so just, I think this was in the morning, one of the few times that I would photograph like during the day. Um, and, again, you're just sort of in the clouds, almost looking down, almost like a God's view.
Beautiful.
So again, I would have no idea that this is sort of painting the red onto the banks of this river, um, and really love this intersection, sort of almost like this metaphor of a land in change or kind of being overwhelmed. And you can see here's some like maybe electricity poles or something.
It really gives you a sort of a texture, those little elements, right? You know, the bicycle, the poles, the lights.
This is a boat. If you can barely see, there's a light
Yeah.
here. This light, by the way, these lights here, so again, this is maybe more twilight, but I think those are, let me just go back, these lights and these lights on the right side. So again, this is what maybe you would see. It's like, oh, well, it just looks like, some random warning lights. But sorry, after a number of an hour or two exposure, these kind of become overwhelming elements. And I just have a few more. Are we okay with time?
Yeah, just move along. Yep.
Okay.
Beautiful.
I think I literally have like two more after this, but I just wanted to show this. Maybe you can barely see. This is like a car or a truck, and this is part of the abandoned army base. Um, but there's again sort of like this trace of human activity that's just kind of being, you know, kind of just a small kind of reference that is in the land. Oh, and I think this is one of the last ones. So I was thinking that I don't know if you remember The Shining, the Stanley Kubrick film, but I love that film. And I guess I wonder why. I mean, but there's a moment where there's elevators that open up with blood.
Yeah.
Um, and so it just reminds me, just after looking at this recently, that the way the land is sort of painted in this red, again by those same lights, I think, is just so very eerie and poetic and haunting. So those are all the things that I'm aiming for and to capture. This was, and there's just two images left. This is an exhibition. And so what I did was I made these, it's hard to see, but no frame against the wall, maybe like an inch off, and no glaze, like no glass or anything else. So try to make them as as approachable or as you can enter them as possible. So that was, and this was at the American Scandinavian Foundation, which supported, which gave me grant money to go there.
Great.
So that's it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful.
This,
Um,
feel free to contact me. Any questions?
yeah, you should you could put all your information in the chat room, Steve. So
Okay.
people, do you sell prints, Steve?
Yes, I do. I usually have like a dish. I usually make them, it's hard to see, but I don't know if you can see. Maybe they're like 38 by 50 inches.
Wow.
like edition of five. So very low edition, fine art exhibition prints and things like that.
Beautiful.
Um, and trying to work on a book and things like that. So
Yeah,
Great.
I was just gonna ask, are you working on a book for Greenland or for your nighttime series?
yeah, so I think it makes sense to well, I think I'm gonna actually I was literally working on this today of the Greenland series and like putting together an email, like all the things necessary
Mhm.
for that. But yeah.
Yeah, and if anyone else has any questions, you could ask now, or put them in the chat room. Um, and I have to say, Steve, you're one of the. I mean, I can count on half a hand of a photographer that actually kept within the time limit, which is just amazing. That just does not happen. And there's a lot of criminals, who are watching right now who will remember that nobody keeps under the right time limit. So thank you very
Oh
much.
my God.
Yeah.
Ah,
So Steve, where's the next place you go to? Do you have like sort of a wish list? If I could go, I would go here.
yeah, I think I'm just going to put my info in here too. Yeah, I think I would like to go back to Greenland. I'd like to apply for like some larger grants,
Okay.
like a Guggenheim Fellowship, and I've applied for them, so to keep it on applying. Oh, thank you so much for the kind words. I'm just
Yeah.
looking. Thank you. Um, but I think, but it's also incredibly exhausting to do.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
sure.
but actually, I had this idea, which I haven't looked into in like a couple of months, but I had the idea of photographing in catacombs.
Okay.
And I did some initial research, and I've been to some in Palermo and elsewhere, and I know there's actually many dozens of places. So maybe that's another project.
And
Not sure, but
when do you feel that I've got it? Like I've got Greenland. Like what is as far as your creative process, like I feel really comfortable. I've got it, and I can walk away for the moment.
yeah, I mean, I think there's I showed you the map, but there's a part of East Greenland that's extremely remote, where only like 5,000 people live, and there's actually a glacier that you have to take a helicopter to, but it's actually moving. You can actually, I think, see it move, retreat. So I have this vision of going there and seeing like a giant piece of land or ice that's kind of in blur, but that's like another project.
Mm.
So maybe that's possible, and maybe that's something I can do. Also, I just want to mention that I did get some grants. Oh, thank you so much. Just let me think. I got a grant. I asked a lot of people for, like, I got, you know, a few that, like $5,000 to go to Greenland, which is like nothing. That's like the airfare and maybe something. But I did ask Visit Greenland, and they gave me some kind of trade and things. I also asked for a tripod, the Ginzo tripod or whatever, the Italian company that's they're owned now by or whatever. And I think I got something else. So just a reminder, if you're going on grants or whatever, don't be afraid to ask for things, or like you can usually you can go to a website, and sometimes they even have a page that's dedicated for community engagement, like corporations or things like that. So I just want to mention that to other people that you can there are other options. So
Yeah, just keep digging, right? I mean, keep digging,
yeah.
research,
Hmm.
right? That's it. Well,
I
Steve,
have
thank you
I
very.
have
Oh, another,
question.
I have, okay, go ahead.
When you apply for grant, do they ask you how much money you are asking for, or they are give you money? They said this is the money, just go ahead and do it. Or you say the list of the your expenses and the things you want to do, then you ask for that money. How does it work?
Yeah, so usually, I mean, first of all, to be honest, there's like hardly any grants, so you just like digging, digging, digging. So the one from the American Scandinavian Foundation, I think the maximum was 5,000. So usually that's what they are. So for a month doesn't really cover that much.
Right,
Um, so that's where I try to get a tripod and other
right.
things.
Can you apply for one project in a different grant and get different money from different places, or no?
Um, I think it's usually just like for one place, like a very specific thing. Yeah, and you'd be surprised how many grants that are kind of out there. I was sponsored to go to the Netherlands. I think there's maybe one or two images in there that was, like 2,500, which again is like nothing, but I mean, I'm grateful for it. Um, but so it's usually doesn't really cover that much. Yeah, there's Audrey. Yeah, good to see you. And foundations have grants. So again, this was the American Scandinavian Foundation. The other one was the American Netherlands Foundation. So there's some hidden things that are around.
Yeah, and what we could do is, if people have other questions for Steve, you can put them in the chat room, and we can get back to it later because I really want to get Beth.
Yeah, sorry. Don't.
No, no, that's
Yeah,
fine. Just to
yeah,
get
you tell
Beth
me.
Beth started.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Steve. And again, check your chat room. You see a lot of nice comments in there and a couple of questions.